Hello and welcome to Tuesday DJ Gig Tips, brought to you by Vibo, the music planning app. I saw this picture on social media yesterday. This is Rachel Lynch loading into a wedding. And my comment under the picture was, "Holy crap, that's a lot of DJ stuff. How big is this wedding you're doing?" Now, in all fairness to Rachel, it was a ceremony, a cocktail, and reception. She needed separate speakers or sound systems for each one of those things. She had photo booths. She's got some custom stands. And there's nothing wrong with having a lot of DJ stuff. If you like bringing a lot of stuff and doing big stuff at your events, cool. But let's pretend for a minute that you need to downsize or you want to downsize. I had to do it, but a lot of other people do it too. What are some of the reasons that a person may want to downsize? Somebody like me with a physical disability, I had to do it. It was a necessity. If I didn't do it, I wasn't going to be able to work anymore. So I had to find stuff that was physically manageable for me to handle. And the system's evolved over the last 10 years. I'll get into that a little later. There are people out there that I've talked to who have said, you know what? I'm getting older. I can't handle this stuff anymore. My wife used to help me, but she's having problems. I think I'm going to have to retire. They have built new systems that were physically easier for them to handle, and they're still able to work. So sometimes you have to do it. It's a necessity. Somebody like Rachel is quite a bit younger than me with the use of both of her arms and legs. She doesn't have a problem with this. Plus, I'm sure her fiance, J-Hip, sorts out with a lot of that stuff too. I'm thinking he does. Maybe he does. At any rate, good on her. But yeah, I can't do it, and a lot of folks out there, they just can't do it. Smaller is allowing them to still work like it has me. Another reason you may want to downsize is a matter of setting up and breaking down, which is also an issue that I had. Could I handle a big system if I really wanted to? Yeah, I would be exhausted, but I could handle it. But could I get it up in an hour and down in an hour? In the old days, when bands were playing at weddings and such, there wasn't this like time limit you had to really pay attention to get broke down and loaded out and out of there. People would stick around for a long time. It was okay. But today, they want you out pretty quick. Now, the system that I put together, I allow myself an hour to set it up, but I can usually get it up and down in probably about 20-25 minutes. So that's a big one. Just because you can set it up doesn't mean you can set it up in a timely manner or break it down in a timely manner, and you need to at some of these venues. Maybe it's the vehicle. Maybe you don't want to have this big extra vehicle to haul your gear in anymore. You'd like to use the family car, but your gear doesn't fit in the family car. So you have to figure out what gear that you can buy that you can puzzle into your family's Toyota Corolla to get back and forth to your event. There are a lot of reasons to downsize. Maybe you just want to. And it's not a bad thing. What I don't want to do when I downsize is compromise quality. I was inspired by the movie Coneheads with Dan Aykroyd. There's a scene in that movie where he's in charge of this big fireworks display at the football game. And he's sitting in his seat, and he's got his team gear on or whatever. It's night. And he shoots off this little bottle rocket. Everybody's like, oh, man, what's going on with that? And it pops, and it's nothing. And then like 2 seconds later, there's this like nuclear explosion or something. It's amazing. It's awe. Like, wow. And everybody in the audience, their hair's blown back and they're sunburnt. And then everybody just stands up and cheers because it's the most amazing thing they've ever seen. That's what I was thinking about. It doesn't have to be big to be impressive. And maybe there's a little bit of under promise over deliver there. You can put a system together if you're smart where it doesn't look like much, but wow, once you turn it on, you hear the sound, you see the lights, you're like, hey, that's really cool. Now, my presentation has improved drastically over the last 10 years. But my first thought when I put my system together out of necessity with what was available to me at the time as far as technology and such goes was, hey, make it functional. Worry about form later. Let's just get it functional right now. And for me, functional was speakers that I can handle and put on the tripod, Frankenstein's that put the speakers up in the air, things of that nature, and minimal on the lights. I knew I needed sound at every event, but I don't need lights at every event. But if I'm going to do lights, how easy can I make it for myself? Well, the first thing I thought of is I need to get rid of trussing and tripods and light stands. So how can I do that? Well, if I can find fixtures that I can put on the floor and that will reflect off of surfaces that exist at the venue, like a wall or a column or whatever, that's going to be a lot easier and I think look more impressive than a light tree with light shining in people's eyes. Uplighting. If you can make your uplighting double as dance lighting, hey, that's pretty cool. Now, back in the old days, I didn't have a lot of battery powered stuff that I could control very easily. I had some Wi-Fi boxes that I was using and some small lighting controllers, and I was using duct tape and all kinds of stuff to make this stuff as small as I could, but I was still plugging it into the wall. Fast forward to today, it's battery powered wireless controlled lighting that looks amazing that I'm using. I really like it. The Ape stuff is what I'm using. There are other things out there. Colorado Sound and Light makes stuff. I'm sure that ADJ and Chauvet make things as well. There are options. You don't have to use big light trees. You have to think about the type of events you're doing too. You don't want to buy a set of Evolve 50s and do school dances, big school dances. It's not enough sound. So, considering that I'm doing primarily wedding receptions of 150 people or less, the column arrays, when they came around, man, that was the ticket. Because they're easier to set up, eliminates tripods completely, and not only does it eliminate the tripods, but it eliminates the cable management on the tripod, and hiding it all with scrim or something. That's less setup. It's less to carry. And I found advantages with this stuff that's sitting right here next to me, or you can see back here, over and beyond what a two-way top cab does for most of the events that I do. And I'm talking the weddings and the smaller parties. If I do something like a school dance, I've got a different system that I'm bringing. It's not the column arrays. But whenever I'm doing a wedding, that is when I can do the small compact stuff, which is most of the stuff that I do. It's 95% of the stuff that I do, really, when I think about it. Now, dumb stuff like spare cables is something that I thought about as well. I know people who have giant spare cable bags. But, when I look at my system, I'm using 3 XLR cables. One's for mic, 2 are for speakers. I've got 1/4-inch cables as well that I use for the wireless microphone. But, that's really all I have. And I've got good cables. I use Bespeco stuff. I'm not buying the cheap stuff. I'm buying the good stuff, but it's not the expensive stuff. I really like Bespeco. If you haven't looked into their stuff, I believe it's the titanium series. They're really good. So they just don't fail on you. But just in case an elephant were to step on one and break it or something, I have a spare XLR cable. I don't need 3. I certainly don't need 17. Same thing with IAC cables. What do I have that uses an IAC cable? Speakers. Nothing else does. Everything else is something else. Some other kind of cable. So I don't need 37 IAC cables sitting around. Now I do have some extra long IAC cables that might work for some setups. But I got a pair of those. And then I have one spare human being sized XLR cable. Those are my spares. So I don't have to have this giant spare cable bag. That's a big help. Now the table I use, it works really well for me. Some people don't like the ProEvent table. They don't like how it sets up and it doesn't work ideally for them. But for me it does. I don't have to bend over when I set it up. That's less fatigue. And I can get that table up quicker than I can set up a 6-foot banquet and dress it. And it's less fatigue on me when I'm actually performing because I'm not bending over as much as I had no idea that I was doing with the 6-foot banquet. It's 36 inches high, so there's less fatigue on my back. And I don't have to dress it. It already looks good. Cable management, I've got it down real simple on that thing. It doesn't take a lot of time. But yeah, it's a matter of kind of just looking at things and figuring out, what do you need? Not what do you want, what do you need? And putting that together. Something that I would encourage anyone who wants to downsize is to understand This isn't always a cheap date. You're going to have to spend some money on some product if you want to keep your quality up. Yeah, you can downsize pretty easily with the stuff that's out here right now, like this American Audio speaker. It's 110 decibels, which, to me, that's like wedding ceremony. Maybe a small cocktail. You'd never use these for mains. It's just not enough, in my opinion. It's not enough. The price is right, but it can't do the job I need it to do. So I need to step up to something like the Evolve system or the FBT CS1000. I know JBL has things. LD has some bigger stuff than the Maui 5 out there. They get different Maui systems that are bigger. Turbo Sound makes stuff. A lot of companies make this stuff. But make sure you're getting something that not only can you manage, but fits the type of events that you do. And if you got to spend the money on this stuff, you got to spend the money on this stuff. It's just how it goes. I looked at my system and I thought, what could I do right now if I wanted to make it even more manageable? And the one thing that I could do, if I wanted to, and it's not that important to me right now, but I could get lighter weight laptops. I'm using Asus Republic of Gamers laptops. Those things are heavy, guys. In a bag, I know it's 20 pounds with all the other stuff I have in there. I could get like a MacBook Air. I'm not a Mac guy, but I know that would work. I could have that if I had the right storage in it, and I could lighten the load quite a bit. I bring a spare laptop just in case. I don't even have to do that. I could do a tablet if I wanted to, but I do still carry a spare laptop, which is something else I wanted to talk about, was having kind of built-in backup. In the old days, you used to have passive speakers and an amplifier, even if you just had, two-way tops. That's all you had, no sub. You had those and an amp. If the amp went, you had no sound. Not the case now with powered speakers. One speaker goes, you still have another one. So that's built-in backup. That's pretty nice, right? If my mixing board goes, on my Evolve 50s, they have built-in mixing boards in them. I got to rewire some stuff. It's going to take me a few minutes. But the show can go on. If I lose a light, who cares? I have other lights. I mean, it's these kind of things that I think about. Instead of carrying extra things with me, what kind of built-in redundancies exist in my system? That lightens the load. When you're not carrying around extra cases for stuff. It adds up. Believe me, I know. I used to carry a lot of spares. There's a lot of stuff to carry around. Now, the spare laptop is even a chore, because everything else I've kind of managed to make smaller. Now, if I had a smaller laptop, I could put both of them in the bag and it wouldn't be an issue, and they'd be lighter than one. The reason I have the big laptop is because I like a lot of storage and I like a 17-inch screen because, the eyes. But that's one thing I could do to lighten things up. And the last thing I'll mention is trying to build stuff into your system so you're not constantly running wires. Pre-wiring your system is what I'm looking to say here. I've pre-wired a lot of things, like those big laptops I'm talking about. I don't have to pull out the power supplies for these things and plug them in anywhere. I have a spare power supply, hardwired as much as you can, I guess, built into my mixer case. So once the mixer's up and the laptop stands up, I put the laptop on the stand, I plug in a USB cable and a power cable, and it's done. I don't have to take anything out of the bag or wrap it up or pack it up or anything else. Anything you can do to pre-wire is a good thing. That's something that helps out a lot, especially with that setup and breakdown. But anyway, just some things to think about. And maybe, like I said, you don't need to downsize, or you don't want to downsize, or maybe you want to get bigger stuff than you have. Cool. But for those of us who need to downsize, for whatever reason, or want to for whatever reason, some ideas for you. That was my thought pattern. It continues to be, and I'm always making little improvements to the system. As soon as some new technology comes out that's easier and maybe even better than what I have, I'm on it. That's what I'm going to use. I typically don't chase after the stuff that makes my job harder. Why would I do that? I know some of you love your big moving heads and trussing systems and all that. Again, I'm not hating on you. I'm only saying that if you need to downsize, there's some ideas for you. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. We'll see you next time. Practice and enjoy.